fascinating world of business law. So, what exactly is business law? Let's dive right in. Business law, which is also known as commercial law, really refers to simply a legal framework. And that legal framework governs businesses and commercial transactions. Now, business law, of course, encompasses a very wide range of legal principles, rules, and regulations. And ultimately, the goal is to try to ensure fair and transparent business practices. Now, understanding business law is really important for entrepreneurs, business owners, as well as professionals in various fields. But let's take a little bit of a closer look at some of the key areas of business law. The first area we're going to talk about are contracts. Now, contracts are fundamental aspects of business law. Now, contracts are important because what they do is they establish legal obligations between parties, and they outline the terms and conditions of those agreements. Whether it's sales contracts or employment agreements, understanding contract formation and interpretation and remedies for breach, these things are crucial to being able to run a business, as in the course of running businesses, we oftentimes create a number of different contracts, whether it's through wholesale relationships, whether it's through employment agreements. And so understanding the ins and outs of those is extremely important, but also helps us to be able to run our businesses successfully. The next element of business law that's important is what we call intellectual property. Now, intellectual property rights are, of course, another critical area of business law. And intellectual property is something you're probably familiar with, but ultimately is designed to provide protection for creative works. And so that includes things like what we call trademarks, includes copyrights, and other creative works. So ultimately, understanding intellectual property helps businesses safeguard some of the innovations they create and allows them to protect unauthorized use or infringement by other parties, which can be extremely important in order for being able to protect those things that you create. Another key area of business law is what we call employment law. Now, employment law ultimately governs the relationships between employers and employees. Employment law covers such areas as contracts, or employment contracts rather, which is a concept that we just discussed in the first section, but also includes things like wages, workplace discrimination, and ultimately termination. Now, complying with employment law ultimately ensures fair treatment and really protects the rights of both employers as well as employees. And as someone who potentially would be running a business in some capacity, understanding employment law is extremely important because we need to understand the rules of the game and what is considered to be fair to avoid unfair treatment, but also to potentially avoid affecting the business in some way that can open it up for some sort of lawsuit. The next element of business law that's extremely important is what we call corporate law. Now, corporate law ultimately deals with what we call the formation as well as governance of business entities. Under this particular category, what's included really is the legal requirements for different sorts of business structures, which includes things like sole proprietorships, includes partnerships, as well as corporations. And one of the things that we're going to discuss a little bit later in the course is some of the different specifics with regards to setting up those types of structures. And they could have, or provide rather, advantages for us in terms of taxation and liability and those sorts of things. And so corporate law is really what provides a lot of the rules related to what we can do with those types of structures. Corporate law also defines the rights and responsibilities of titles such as director, shareholders, as well as stakeholders. And so it's important for us to understand those particular formalities so that we can operate within the confines of those roles. Another important area of business law is taxation, which of course tends to be everybody's favorite topic. Now, taxation probably doesn't require a great deal of explanation since it's something that just us as individual consumers and we are used to experiencing. But ultimately, from a business standpoint, we want to be able to understand some of the basics related to income tax, sales tax, as well as payroll. Because not only are we responsible for reporting these types of things on behalf of our workforce, but ultimately compliance and effective tax planning can have a significant role on the financial well-being of the company. And so we need to be able to understand some of the elements of the tax code in order to understand not only our responsibilities, but also to do some forward range, long-term planning to put our businesses into a position to where we're financially healthy. The next important element of business law, and I'm running out of space here, so I'm going to start to fill in a little bit of the margins, is what we call dispute resolution. Now, dispute resolution is ultimately about resolving conflicts and disagreements that may arise as a result or in the course of business transactions. Alternate dispute resolution methods like mediation, arbitration, offer efficient and really cost-effective ways to settle disputes outside of a courtroom, which can be particularly costly. And so business law incorporates dispute resolution, which is an important way for us to be able to remedy certain disagreements in a very efficient and cost-effective manner. Now, the last category of business law is what we call international business law. International business law ultimately governs what we call cross-border transactions. This also incorporates things like trade agreements and ultimately just the legal consideration when doing business globally. And this can become extremely challenging considering that the laws in one country may differ from the laws of another country as well. But understanding some of those laws and regulations is essential for being able to operate businesses in a global economy, which is what we're increasingly finding as a result of globalization over the last 30 to 40 years. So to wrap up, business law really provides a legal framework for businesses to operate. It helps them protect their rights and helps ensure fair and transparent practices. And ultimately, understanding and complying with business law is really important for entrepreneurs, business owners, and professionals in all industries as it safeguards our interests, helps prevent legal disputes, and promotes a healthy business environment.